The world isn't what it used to be. The future doesn't fit in the containers of the past, and leadership is one container that needs to be radically reshaped.
Rishad, that's so right. We have new technologies, AI, and new expectations around work.
Welcome to Unbossing, a show that reevaluates leadership in a new age of business and work.
In each episode, we're going to connect with the most badass bosses in business and tech and ask them, what did you have to unlearn to succeed again?
I'm Rishad Tobaccowala. I've spent decades at the intersection of business, media, and marketing, watching industries transform, watching leaders rise and fall, and trying to make sense of what actually works when everything keeps changing.
And I'm Drew Ianni. I've spent my career in media, tech, live experiences, and entrepreneurship, and I've come to believe that the most dangerous thing a leader can do right now is be too attached to what worked before. For our very first episode, we couldn't have asked for a better guest, Rishad. He spent 25 years building Netflix from a scrappy DVD by mail startup into one of the most influential names in the history of entertainment.
He also wrote one of the most studied company culture documents in Silicon Valley history, the famous Netflix Culture Memo. Under Reed Hastings, Netflix grew into a multi-billion-dollar company.
Then he did something most founders can't do. He stepped away while the company was still winning. Today, he's developing a private ski mountain community in Utah called Powder Mountain.
One of the things I've often been told is every career has a midnight hour and the smart people leave at 5 to 12. Most people are not smart enough to do so. But here is a gentleman who definitely left probably at 11:45.
That's right.
In addition to his newest venture in real estate, he's also serving on the board of the leading AI company Anthropic and reflecting on everything he's built, including what he wishes he'd done differently. This is a conversation about unlearning at the highest level.
The highest level indeed, Rishad. Let's jump into our conversation with Reed Hastings.
Reed, thank you again for being on the show. What are you up to these days and what's top of mind for you?
Well, Rishad, I had the privilege of running Netflix for 25 years, and I loved every moment. It was just growth, global content, exciting. But 3 years ago, I retired, and then my new project is this real estate development at Powder Mountain, creating an amazing community, and it could not be more different from Netflix. I know all the customers. It's a small group in the community and participating, and it's so much fun. And so again, luxury real estate, it turns out, has a lot of similarities to Netflix, mostly in kind of the organizational dynamics. How do we build a great culture within the organization, and then from that, deliver amazing services to our members?
So culture is something that clearly you and your colleagues at Netflix are famous for, both in your years of Netflix culture as well as now. What are some of the things that have remained the same and what are some of the things that have changed, if any?
Well, the fundamental thing that stayed the same is the focus on team, not family, and organizing your company like it was a professional sports team where you have to play for your position all the time to seek the championship. And that as the core metaphor rather than the family metaphor, which is quite common and strong. So it's quite a big shift getting people to the team orientation. I would say the second thing that's stayed the same is kind of managing through context rather than control. So the factory is the other big metaphor that we've had. It powered the Industrial Revolution and provided huge value. So thinking of a business as a factory is also very, very common. But, many of our businesses are creative businesses, not a factory. And they want to be managed quite differently than a factory, much less top-down, much more inspiring rather than managing.
Reed, one follow-up in regards to culture. We've had two fairly traumatic and dramatic events in the last several years. I still don't believe we're fully through COVID in terms of its long-term sort of effects on us as human beings. And then, of course, AI. And there's a lot of fear about staying relevant and not being replaced. Do you have advice for leaders as they lead their teams and there is a lot of fear out there? How do you help them work through that? How do you keep your own teams motivated? Any advice for managing leading in a time of fear?
With Netflix, we were always afraid of getting run over as the internet grew and we were a DVD shipper. And it would be so easy to be left behind as the best DVD shipper on the planet. And so I think that fear was quite productive because it made us very focused on streaming and then how do we succeed in streaming. So the trick is some degree of fear is productive and then some degree it becomes counterproductive, is too high.
Right.
And somewhat think of back to the professional athlete. Imagine that at every practice and certainly every game, you could have a career-ending injury. And yet, if you think about that, it's only more likely to happen. You have to play your heart out and basically will yourself to ignore the reality of the danger of a mega accident. Either you can set the truthful fear aside because it's unproductive, or you can't, in which case you get out of athletics. I try to help people figure out what's their type and how do they think about things. And if they can't deal with a small amount of fear, then it's just not a good fit at the company.
And in terms of Powder Mountain, we want to hear about that. So please tell us about Powder Mountain. But I'm always interested in the genesis of an idea. What was that aha moment where it's like, this is what I want to do? And did you have a little bit of fear too? It's something new. You never know how it's going to go. And what was your approach in terms of being an entrepreneur again? And what was the genesis of founding Powder Mountain?
I was running Netflix and I owned a home, my wife and I, up at Powder Mountain, and it was falling apart and close to bankruptcy, which is what happens in many real estate projects. So I would say it was more like a fixer-upper where I could come in with overwhelming capital and give the place confidence and shift the direction some. But so I can say I had the original idea. Yellowstone Club really pioneered the idea of high-end skiing in the U.S. They've sold out, and this is a derivation of Yellowstone Club with some twists, a lot more artistic and creative. But that basic idea of 600 families owning a ski mountain and having it to themselves is pretty incredible.
That's great. And tell us a bit about it. Tell us about the environment and what people can expect from it. And my happy place is typically heavenly, but maybe I'm going to have to come check out Powder Mountain.
For sure. Heavenly has a special spot in everybody who's skied it because to look over Lake Tahoe on a sunny day, it's absolutely incredible. Powder Mountain's near Salt Lake City, about an hour from the airport, huge acreage. It's two heavenlies and it's just amazing. There's a whole public side, Powder Mountain, and then a private side, Powder Haven.
Okay.
Both of them are substantial. And in real estate, you sell lots and help people build homes and build up the neighborhood. We've got 60 homes completed, a bunch under construction. So it's rapidly growing, building out more and more lifts, and generally investing in all the infrastructure.
In some ways, it's like the reverse of what you did at Netflix, where you went from the real to the virtual. Here you've gone from the virtual to the real, including real estate.
Yeah, no, it's very fun to do things that are different. My company before Netflix was a public software company, totally different than Netflix also. It was high-end engineering tools, so very techy. So I do like new challenges. It's been incredibly satisfying to have the physicality in this case, as you describe, in designing the new lodge and in seeing, the lifts. And it's very micro compared to both the global and the massive scale of Netflix.
And when we talked about Netflix at the beginning, you said some things remain the same, team versus family and context versus control. What are things that changed or that make less sense that you learned how to unlearn or don't matter that much?
I think we explained the initial culture in a way that it came across as very competitive between people. And in fact, it was very loving and very supportive. So new employees would remark all the time of, wow, everyone is so helpful. And, it's such a nice community. And that really didn't come across in the way, in the metaphors that we chose. And if I was doing it over at Powder, we describe ourselves as big-hearted champions. Okay. And so we really led with the heart part. And I wish we had done that at Netflix and said that, because I think we would have had a clearer and a warmer description rather than a sort of MBA fight for results orientation, which wasn't intentional, but came across in those memos.
One of the things, Reed, is and probably one of the reasons when you all wrote the manifesto and some people came in and they thought it was more competitive, is because that memo had a certain degree of radical candor. And you all meant it much more in a trust and compassion versus radical candor being, I'm going to smash your face and tell you what's happening right away. Can you speak a little bit these days? Because, there's a world that's all around us that's changing about things like trust and candor and what that role has in both leading and managing yourself and companies.
Focusing on productive candor, I think is really important. Some people say bring your whole self to work, but I think that's a little too simplistic. I know what it's trying to get at, which is your identity, not having to suppress it. But I don't want to see someone's id come to work. So if you come in and you're really angry and you say, but that's my whole self, that's still not very productive. So I think of it as bringing your best self to work. It's around collaboration. It's around honesty. It's around working for the benefit of the organization, all of those key attributes. So on the radical candor, radical is a good provocative word, but you don't want to be in love with radical for its own sake. You want to be in highly productive communications. And so it's, again, really focus on connection and productivity.
And with regard to this heart, in our briefing, we've read that you're now on the board of Anthropic, which obviously is one of the leading AI companies. And these days, a lot of people say in an age of AI, we're going to require HI. And HI is everything from human to heart, etc. What are your perspectives on that? Is that a true feeling, or what do you believe?
Look, we're early in the AI revolution. And so I think there's a lot of learning still to go ahead. Right now, the AI is focused on very useful tasks. Can we do this presentation? Can we do this spreadsheet? But it will continue to improve. And then we humans will interact with it in novel ways. And it's very exciting about expanding human flourishing through using the technology. Again, whether that's video conferencing online, people probably had fears, but we as a society has figured out how to use it well. This is a fundamentally more powerful technology, but it's still just continuing to develop and improve.
So probably one form of unlearning is usually whenever there is a new technology, people fear it. But over time, most technology empowers and enables. Though in the early days, it feels like it's replacing.
Yeah, absolutely. When we lost the horse, we all used to have horses. But, overall, life's better and when we get around with a combination of airplanes, trains, and cars.
In terms of the AI revolution, Reed, I'm born and raised in the Bay, and I guess the three major revolutions I've seen here were internet, mobile, and now AI. What about this revolution seems the same to you? It's okay, folks, let's calm down a little bit. Internet was going to transform and change, and there was some fear the mobile was transformed. And this is now the big revolution. What seems the same to you in terms of these past revolutions, and what maybe does seem different this time around?
Well, it's definitely faster adoption, and that's probably true of each layer because it builds on the prior layers. And so the global adoption of AI is phenomenal. But I think AI is quite different because it's so general. And we will see how it evolves and what kinds of use cases, but it'll be broader than just the internet in its possibilities, mostly positive, but perhaps some negative.
So in your 25 years as the CEO, outside of the moving from physical DVD to streaming, were there like phases that forced you to change as a leader?
For sure. I mean, in the first years, it was straight out competition with Blockbuster of who was better at mailing DVDs and building up a consumer subscription business. And that was very intensive, very operational, very US centric. Then we started to do a little bit of streaming, but it was a small fragment of our business. So it was managing, this is going to be important someday. But for today, DVD is, generating all the profit in the business, et cetera. Then we started getting into original content like House of Cards and Orange is the New Black and doing creative work. And then we started the global expansion first with Canada and then Latin America and then Europe and then opening up to the whole world in 2016. And so then it was understanding Korean sensibilities around content, understanding Brazilian, German. And these are different cultures than American culture with different entertainment tastes. And yet we wanted to be the signature entertainment service all around the world. That was much more of a open-minded, learning things rapidly. Again, why are Turkish serialized dramas so popular all around the world? What is it that they understand that's different and better than other ones?
And what were the biggest mistakes you made, and what were your learnings from those?
Early on, probably 2011, we were growing still on DVD, but really trying to push the streaming. And we had a lot of streaming competitors like Hulu. And we realized we needed to not be too dependent on DVD. And so we organized a thing called the Quick Start episode, where we spun off the DVD or attempted to. And it was just too early for the customers. Most of them were still using in the US DVD primarily. And so we had a little fiasco. The stock dropped by 75%. We recovered slowly. And it was the right direction. It's where we ended up with a separate DVD, DVD.com. But it really says that sometimes you can be too early because we were so focused on not being left behind with DVD and winning and streaming.
Could it be that being too early allows you to learn fast versus if you're too late, you don't learn?
It's not as bad as being too late, but you're looking for optimality. You're looking to win the game, to stick the landing. And so we were just a little bit too early. So that was the biggest fiasco. Everything else was very small and fixable. And we try to do lots of iteration on things to learn as we go.
The title of the show is Unbossing. And a few years ago, you decided to unboss yourself from Netflix. I know you're still the executive chairman, but you were no longer. So what made you unboss yourself?
The two guys who run the company now, Greg Peters and Ted Sarandos, were ready. And I was super proud of their effectiveness. And I could tell that I could step aside safely and that they would prosper. And they've done incredibly well. I mean, they've doubled the stock price. They're so excited and passionate and hungry. And it's exciting to see and exciting to give them the opportunity.
You were one of the rare ones who leave before the midnight hour. That's a learning. Why are a lot of people not doing that or seem not to be doing that?
Well, I don't know. I think of my contemporaries. I think there's lots of positive examples. And there are some people like Warren Buffett who continue to do their thing until, 99. And I'm not critical of that. I think it really depends on what people want to do, what fulfills them.
In terms of, and this is a shift to a somewhat more dry subject, but a lot of our members at the Athena Project are first-time board members or want to serve on boards. What's the role of governance today? And also, what makes an effective board and what makes an effective board member? What's your advice for maybe that first-time board member? And what is effective governance today? Obviously, with AI, governance is more important than ever.
With a smaller company, the board members often know more than the CEO and can be coaches. Mm-hmm. And then as a firm gets bigger and bigger and more specialized and sophisticated, and the conflict rules are that, if you run an airline, you can't be on the board of another airline.
Right.
And so if you've got a lot of industry knowledge, you're prevented from participating. So inherently in a large company like an airline, you have a bunch of non-airline people. So you can't really add that much specific. You're not like a McKinsey consultant anymore.
Right.
Whereas I think when you're aboard on a small organization, you're like a McKinsey consultant with broad pattern matching. So it varies. And in a larger company, you're like an insurance layer, of stability if things go wrong, as opposed to guiding the company in a strategic sense. Because again, it's not your industry and, you're on 2 days a quarter.
Yeah.
You're not in the heart of it.
And all boards certainly aren't created equal. But even for smaller company or larger company, is there advice if I'm a first-time board member or I'm looking to be a board member? What do you need to bring to the table? When do you speak up? When do you not speak up? These types of things.
Yeah, it depends a lot on how much you know the business. Did you grow up in the business and you're confident of those instincts versus if you're general pattern matching, then I think you use the first couple meetings to ask a lot of questions to learn yourself, but you're not like even attempting to add value and let that come over time. But it's good to be curious and to read a lot about that organization.
For people who want to be like you or some version of you and are today in their late 30s, early 40s, so they've got 15, 20 years of experience, they're not right out of school, what are some of the pieces of advice if they came to your mountain to Guru Hastings and you were there with your ski goggles, what would you say to them?
I don't know that I can abstract the lessons other than there's so much luck in it. When I look back at my first company and the ups and downs of that, where I really learned management, I learned running a public company, a lot of kind of core skills. That was just a lot of good fortune, and it easily could have been different. And then with Netflix, I'm amazed we never got bought along the way, and it would be a modest little success. I cannot overestimate, the amount of luck that was involved. So I think if you're like, I want to be a billionaire or my life's worthless, that's a bad perspective. I never had that. It has turned out super well, but again, it's as if I was playing double or nothing again and again and again, and eventually, randomly, I won this many bets. I would seek out things that you enjoy and things that, are profound and satisfying. And then for some of them, there'll be great economic fortune, but it won't happen to all, not through their fault. And so it's not measuring by that.
I love to hear stories, Reed, and I want to ask about the founding of Netflix and the aha moment in that moment where you said, but I want to ask it in the context of there are so many people who have ideas and maybe never take the leap. So could you first tell us about how Netflix started and your aha moment and said, this is an opportunity here and this is what I want to do, and advice for people to, what did you do to actually take that leap?
When I was 21 and graduating from college, I joined the Peace Corps. And they sent me to a small country in Southern Africa, Swaziland. And so I've always been sort of a risk taker. And then I got to spend all my school vacations kind of hitchhiking across Africa. So again, this comes back to I'm basically very risk tolerant in my core DNA. And so taking other risks has just been natural to me. So to answer your question, first company, Pure Software, got acquired in 1997. Was thinking about next thing to do. E-commerce was booming. Amazon, has just gone public. Lots of other companies starting CD now. So anyway, looking for something that was in e-commerce like Amazon, but not in Amazon's critical path. And then Blockbuster was an obvious target, and we've all had huge late fees. I had a particularly large one that was a part of the territory. But shipping VHS cassettes was too expensive. They're heavy and big.
Yeah.
And then someone told me about DVD, and I knew you could mail CDs, so I extrapolated that you could mail DVDs without them breaking. And then it was long and slow for a couple of years, 98, 99, 2000, because there weren't many DVD players and people didn't have them. And that's just 25 years ago. And now today, most homes, again, don't have a DVD player. So it went full cycle.
That's great. And in terms of looking at from an entrepreneur standpoint, once you've started and you're in that early growth phase, obviously everything's important, talent's important, capital is important. But looking back during those early times, what would you say was the most important thing to focus on as a young entrepreneur, as your company looks like it's starting off in that early growth phase?
Yeah, I mean, we were very passionate about focus, about doing one thing incredibly well, and that thing was renting DVDs. And it took years of us perfecting how to integrate with the Postal Service, the different postal sorting machines, how to reduce the error rate where you got the wrong DVD from 3% to 2% to 1% to 0.5%. So we had to be pretty maniacal around all of these systems to achieve excellence. And then we had to get lucky that DVD succeeded. There were several competitors to DVD, digital VHS and DivX. And it could have easily been that we built this amazing DVD system for naught if DVD did not mainstream. So we had to take that bet, but we couldn't really affect it. I think the main thing is super tight focus on doing something pretty narrow really well.
Is there anything before we lose you, Reed, that you'd like to share that you either wish you knew or which you see a lot of people thinking one way and you say, buddy, it's the other way?
I took the time to write a book, No Rules Rules, for precisely this purpose, which is I learned so much from reading the books of the entrepreneurs of the 80s and 90s, and I wanted to give back. And it's a great conversation, that book, No Rules Rules, with a business school professor and myself. And she channels the skepticism about all the stuff that we do. And she really had carte blanche to interview people throughout the company and really document all the things that we did and the stories. So I would say reading that book will give you an edge. And then I'm sure people will build upon that and do even better.
Anything else, Reed, you want to tell us about Powder Mountain as we exit? Where do people go? Is there a website? How can they learn more about Powder Mountain?
You know, there's this amazing thing called the internet. So all I have to do is use Claude and say, tell me about Powder Mountain.
That's great.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you for the time. Maybe I'll see you wandering around Los Gatos or Santa Cruz one of these days.
Absolutely. Awesome, you guys. What a great pleasure and nice conversation.
Wow, Rishad, that was great, wasn't it?
It absolutely was. And there were so many amazing, not just nuggets, but almost like huge pieces of learning as well as unlearning. For instance, Reed was very clear that it's a team versus a family. And in a team, you need to have people not only working together, but you have to be at your very best and still current. And you can be eliminated from a team, but you can rarely be eliminated from a family. So the concept really is team versus family. So when many companies say we're a family doesn't fire you, a team can.
He's one of the good guys that really made it. And he talked a lot about big-hearted champions. And I think that comes out and came out in his management style and how he led that company. So yeah, I was very inspired, and even how they have scaled the company as a family. How do you scale a company like that and still feel like a family? I think it's pretty impressive.
The other thing that he mentioned was how increasingly we have to learn to manage through context versus control.
Yeah, it is a lot about letting go, if you will, but you still have to manage and lead. And I think most leaders are always trying to look for that balance, right? He's obviously a very nice person as well, but he's also very disciplined. And I like the fact that they've stayed pretty true to their knitting, and they really pioneered, when you think about it, out of a mass market business model sense. And we take it so for granted today, and everybody's a streamer, but they really pioneered that business model and through discipline and through smart choices. And the proof is in the pudding. Look what he built and his team built at Netflix, right?
While he was not a micromanager, he obviously cared a lot about the details. But then he says, once you get on a board, you, by the very nature, can't be an expert because in most cases, you can't be on the board of the same industry that you happen to have expertise in. So you have to be much more of a pattern matcher and much more of a coach than to be actually a practitioner. So you have to, in a strange way, let go and recognize, as he said, you're more of like an insurance than you are actually a person who does things. Given his board seat on Anthropic, which obviously is today in the center of all the news, whether it's Claude work or them suing or being sued by the US government, etc.
Right.
And so he's fundamentally in the thick of it all. But he reminds us that he believes that AI will be broader and bigger and deeper than all other technologies that have come before. And today, the way people are using it more as sort of productivity tools will actually be a small thing compared to what AI might actually be. So his whole idea of saying, this is not like what's gone before, or what I'm doing now is not what like I used to do before. Two other forms of the success of leaders tend to come from unlearning or recognizing when circumstances change.
You have to be curious, right? That's what he talked about a lot. And just with his curiosity about AI, he gets himself on the board of Anthropic. I mean, where better to be learning and to satisfy that curiosity than on the board of Anthropic? My goodness. And he's probably having a blast and learning a lot. If this conversation resonated with you, we'd love to hear what landed. And if you know a leader who's doing the hard work of unlearning, send them this episode.
We'll be back soon with another conversation about what it actually takes to lead in a world where the old rules don't apply. Until then, don't forget to follow us on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you listen so that you don't miss an episode.
And we want to hear from you. Please leave us a rating and review us on your podcast player of choice. It helps us improve the show and helps others find us. That's all for this episode. I'm Drew Ianni.
And I'm Rishad Tobaccowala. Remember to keep questioning, keep unlearning, and start unbossing. See you next time.
Unbossing is a Bubbler Media iHeart podcast production